So, all right. Okay, good afternoon. Just starting off with a quick update on Burkina Faso and the diplomatic activities from the UN's end. I can tell you the Secretary General has been on the phone with various partners in the region. Yesterday, he spoke with the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki. He's also spoken to Mohamed Bazoum, the president of Niger. Meanwhile, Mohamed Salah Anadif, the head of our Office for West Africa, has also remained very engaged. He's been consulting with various political stakeholders in Burkina Faso, as well as the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Jean-Claude Cassibrou, with whom the prospect of a joint mission to Ouagadougou is being explored. Mr. Anadif will also be attending the ECOWAS summit that is scheduled for the 28th of this month, which I believe is Friday. On Afghanistan, you will have seen this morning the Secretary General, joined by Deborah Lyons, his special representative in Kabul, briefed the Security Council. Secretary General noted that 6 months after the takeover by the Taliban, Afghanistan is hanging by a thread. The Secretary General emphasized that we need to scale up our humanitarian operations to save lives, and we need to suspend the rules and conditions that constrict not only Afghanistan's economy, but our life-saving operations. He stressed that we cannot abandon the people of Afghanistan and that they need peace, they need hope, they need help, and they need it now. The Secretary General also noted that as the economy spirals downwards, human rights are also losing ground, with years of steady progress gone in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Deborah Lyons said that it was time for the Taliban to govern based on trust, not fear, to be inclusive, to protect the rights of all Afghans, and initiate an Afghan dialogue for national reconciliation. On a related note, our UN team in Afghanistan launched today their Kabul 1 UN Transitional Engagement Framework to assist the Afghan people this year. This is an overarching strategic planning document which will ensure the coordination of the UN team's work to reduce the suffering of the Afghan people by saving lives, sustaining essential services, and preserving essential community systems. The resident and humanitarian coordinator, Ramiz Alakbarov, said that this new strategy will help ensure that Afghans can meet their basic human needs, and that acting on this now is more important than ever to avoid that an even wider proportion of the population requires life-saving humanitarian assistance, especially during these harsh winter months. This afternoon, another hot-ticket item, and this time Syria in the Security Council. Geir Pedersen will brief in person on the latest developments, and he's also expected to speak to you at the stakeout after that briefing. I've also been asked a number of times about the humanitarian situation in Tigray. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that a 3.5 metric ton shipment of medical supplies and equipment was flown in by the UN's Humanitarian Air Service and reached Mekele in Tigray on Monday. The supplies are enough for approximately 35,000 people. The shipment includes antibiotics, potassium chloride tablets, and pediatric supplies. They will be used for primary health care and nutrition programs to treat severe acute malnutrition cases among young children. The supplies will be distributed to health and stabilization centers in 4 districts in Tigray. And from Tonga, the resident coordinator for the UN in that part of the Pacific, Sanaka Samarasinha, is supporting the government in the aftermath of the recent volcanic eruption and tsunami. We're helping to coordinate humanitarian action and assistance from all UN agencies, partners, and donors. Due to COVID-19 restrictions in the country, the deployment of additional UN or aid workers from outside Tonga is being discussed with Tongan authorities. Access to safe water remains a key challenge, with many contaminated water reservoirs needing repairs. We're also concerned about the food security and the damage done by crops by the ash fall, and that is being assessed. UN agencies based in Tonga and our partners continue to respond. For example, the World Health Organization is providing medical supplies, technical advice, and support on water testing, food and hygiene support. UNICEF has also dispatched supplies such as jerry cans and dignity kits. To COVID update for you. First, This week, Nicaragua received 1 million doses from COVAX, which was donated by Spain, and we thank them for their generosity. Nicaragua has now received more than 5 million vaccine doses from COVAX so far. And in Bangladesh, the UN team there, led by acting resident coordinator Robert Simpson, continues to support the national response to COVID-19. In the past 7 months, we've helped to deliver nearly 130 million vaccine doses to Bangladesh through COVAX, which more than half of all vaccines in the country has received. So far, our risk communications and community engagement initiatives have reached 76 million people. Since last year, volunteers have visited more than 1.8 million households in Dhaka, identifying more than 35,000 COVID-19 cases, distributing nearly 300,000 masks, and registering more than 135,000 people from vulnerable households for vaccination. UNICEF also helped strengthen the country's ultra-cold chain capacity by delivering 48 freezers and help manage oxygen supply. The UN team is also helping to vaccinate residents at the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar. To date, 81% of camp residents over the age of 18 have received 1 dose, while 8% of the target population have been fully vaccinated. On the socioeconomic front, the UN team, especially through the UN Development Program, is helping authorities identify people who fell into poverty due to the pandemic and immediately provide support. Programming note: tomorrow at 11 o'clock, correspondents are invited, that would be you, are invited to attend the UN's Holocaust Memorial Ceremony to mark the official International Day of the Commemoration, the memories of the victims of the Holocaust. Unfortunately, it will be held virtually this year. Melissa Fleming, the head of our Global Communications Department, will host the ceremony. Invited speakers include the Secretary General, the President of the General Assembly, the permanent representatives of Israel, the United States, children and grandchildren of Jewish and Romani survivors of the Holocaust, and Professor John Roth will deliver the keynote address. The ceremony will include testimonies from Holocaust survivors from Canada, Israel, South Africa, and the U.S. It will be on Web TV. And we are happy to thank Malaysia for their full payment to our budget. And we are at 39 on the honor roll. Speaking of the honor roll, James.
You read a statement about Burkina Faso, but I'd quite like to know some more information. The SG's calls were all to people outside the country, to other leaders. You said that Mr. Anadif had carried out some calls in Burkina Faso to people there. So the first clear question: has anyone spoken to the people who now say they are running the country, the military? Have there been any direct contact between the UN, any UN officials, and the military?
I can only speak for the Secretary General, and that answer is no. I do not believe Mr. Anadif has spoken to anybody in the military. We're trying to check whether our colleagues on the ground have, and as soon as I get confirmation one way or another, I will let you know.
And through these various contacts that have been had at various levels, is there any further news of the fate of the president of the country, President Kabore?
Not from our end. Yes, sir.
Stefan, I want to ask about the Secretary General's reaction about the announcement by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces that they regained control over the prison in Hasaka that was partially taken by ISIS. And is he concerned about these new movements of ISIS in Iraq and Syria?
Well, we're obviously yes to that, but we're also greatly concerned about the fighting that we've seen. And our colleagues at the Human Rights Office in Geneva have also issued a reminder, which we join, to all parties in the conflict, as well as governments who have an influence over the parties, that international requires them to do their utmost to protect civilians, civilian lives, including in the planning and execution of military and security operations. And I think this particular incident also highlights the issue of detainees whose status is unclear, except that they're detained. The status of a lot of people, including families and young children in various camps, Al-Hol and others in the region, which the international community needs to deal with. Habibti.
So you read a statement on the one UN transitional engagement framework for Afghanistan, and Ms. Lyons talked about it too. And she said that this means that the UN needs an additional $3.6 billion to the $4 billion. So my question here, is this an aid, additional aid, or what is this exactly? Is this
The additional money?
investments? Yeah, the 3.6 billion. What is this transitional engagement framework? Is it investments? Is it?
It is. It's a way of better. I mean, the additional money, right, required to implement the framework includes some of the money already given, but it just shows also the increased needs that we see in Afghanistan as we gain access to more regions, and the framework is a way of better managing the resources that we will get and better managing the implementation.
Still didn't is this aid money or is investment money? Because it's like additional aid money that you're asking for.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Nichols, you have a question.
Thanks, Steph. I was just checking the wire, and it's been a year since Fabrizio Hochschild was placed on leave while the investigation was carried out. Do you have any updates on what is happening with him?
Fabrizio, yes, and it's an issue I think you and others have raised for quite some time. I can now confirm that the UN's own internal accountability process concerning Mr. Hochschild has been completed. He's been informed of the outcome. Mr. Hochschild's placement on administrative leave has ended, and he's been separated from service of the UN. Okay.
Sorry, can you clarify, separated from service? Fired?
Separated from service, that he's no longer employed by the UN.
He was asked to leave the UN?
Yes, he was separated from, he had been under administrative leave. The internal...
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Let's try again. He had, as you know, been placed on administrative leave until the 31st of last year. That leave was extended for another month while our own internal process, the investigative process, the review process, to which the various parties in this had a hand, was concluded. That process is now concluded. He was informed of the conclusion, and he has now been separated from service at the UN. Yep.
So what did the investigation find?
Well, the accountability process, internal process, is confidential, and I don't have any more information to share with you, except to say that he's been separated.
What will happen to the position of the tech envoy? Is it vacant now?
It's being recruited. Yeah, it's under recruitment.
That's a really odd way to describe it.
Excuse me?
That's a very odd way to describe it. I mean, was he fired?
Well, we use different terminology. Separated from the organization means you've been separated. That the organization has taken a decision to separate you from the organization. Yeah, go ahead.
You're unprepared to give details of the investigation, which seems strange, but is it fair to say the investigation clearly found against him because of this outcome? I
will let you translate my English into your English. Oh, I can tell you there was an investigation. There was what we call an accountability, which is part of an accountability process. It was concluded. He was informed of the outcome, and as a result of that, he was separated from the organization.
But if there had been a positive outcome of the investigation, he would not have been separated from service.
Benno.
Does the Secretary General think that it was a mistake to making him the tech envoy after the allegations were already made against him a month before?
The Secretary General made the decision, and he made a decision to appoint him. He also made the decision to put him on administrative leave, and he stands by both those decisions.
Is there any change? He was working close to the Secretary General on the 38th floor. Does the Secretary General want to change anything about the overall culture in the higher echelons of the UN as a result of this?
Look, the Secretary General made it clear, really from the beginning, that he would not stand for any sexual abuse, sexual harassment. And I'm not talking about, let me be clear, I'm not talking about this particular case, I'm just talking about his policies. He added to the tools that we have, including adding and hiring investigators who were specialized in sexual abuse and sexual harassment. He added a hotline. This is an ongoing process in any and every organization that we know of.
But this particular case, I think, focused more on bullying, and the way that subordinates were treated by their boss. Is there any change to the way? Are there any lessons learned from this case?
Look, I can't go into the details of the case. I can tell you firsthand that the Secretary General places civility at an extremely high level within his office and within the organization. And he has made that clear to everyone who works for him. Benno, and then we'll go to Abdelhamid.
Thank you. Another follow-up. Following this investigation, are there any other probes into any other high-ranking UN officials' misconduct?
Not that I'm aware of. Mr. Abdelhamid Sayam.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I have two questions, one on Libya. I was wondering why Stephanie Williams did not brief the Security Council recently. Is it because she a special advisor, not a special envoy? Or is there any objection by any members of the Security Council? And what is she now doing in terms of putting a plan for the elections?
Ms. Williams continues to work with the Libyan parties to get them to agree on a framework that would allow the the millions of Libyans who registered to vote to actually vote. The Security Council asked the Secretary General to brief, as they do. He designated Rosemary DiCarlo. Okay.
My second
yes,
question,
of course.
My second question, Stefan, I'm sorry. We talk about Stephanie Williams, so I got, excuse me. Okay. A Palestinian child, his name is Amal Nakhle. He just turned 18 in detention. The Israeli court extended his detention without any charges 3 times. So that's why he turned 18 while he's in detention. He has a terminal illness that eats up the muscles, and his father pleaded to the whole world to help his child come out of jail, including UNICEF issued a statement calling on the Israelis to treat him with kindness. Does Mr. Tor Winsland identify with the statement of UNICEF, or why he didn't issue a statement on his own on this case?
First of all, as a matter of policy, we've always pushed for the release of, or the charging of people under administration, and especially for the release of children. In this case, UNICEF speaks for the UN system in this case.
Sorry, it's back to Mr. Hochschild again. Are there any lessons learned from the fact that this investigation by OIOS took so long? I know you say that the UN has to be, has to be thorough in its procedures, but it was an extremely long time. Is there anything that they can learn from the way this was carried out? And add on to that, during this long period of investigation and administrative leave, was he paid his full salary during that administrative leave?
Well, he was on administrative leave with pay.
So full normal salary for doing nothing.
That's
just because and got lots of money just because the UN takes an extremely long time to carry out its
There are
investigations.
processes, the accountability processes in place. There are rules that some of them are staff rules, all sorts of established rules. And again, I will not speak about this particular case, but I'm going to take a step back to speak about the broader process. As in any investigation, OIOS or others who are tasked do an investigation. Those conclusions are then reviewed by our, not human rights, our human resources colleagues. Various people who are implicated in an investigation have a right to comment. They have a right to ask for extensions, which usually we have to give. There's also administrative tribunals involved. No one is saying that the process is quick. It needs to be thorough. I think in any investigation, you want two things. You want things that are done quickly, but you also want things that are done thoroughly for the benefit of people who are accused and the benefit of accusers.
And in all cases, when people are accused of something, however serious the offence, they continue during that period on full pay.
No, not in. No, I mean there are certain cases where we've placed people on leave without pay.
Follow up on this. So you don't want to speak about the case specifically, but in general, when somebody is on leave and being found guilty then of, for example, sexual harassment, they also don't have to pay their yearly salary that was far beyond $100,000, I guess, right?
I don't know which case you're talking about, but there are rules in place. Staff members have also a right to appeal through administrative tribunals. There is a legal framework. As in any legal frameworks, they tend to be heavy sometimes and sometimes slow, but they're also there to protect people, they're to protect an organization. You're welcome to write about what you feel is how this organization handles things, but things are not done in a haphazard or improvised fashion. We have rules and we have to follow them. Yes,
just a follow-up. So why aren't you publishing the report or part of it, or?
This is standard human resources procedure. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I keep labouring these points, but the optics of this, someone is found guilty for abusing their position in a very senior UN post, an Under-Secretary General post. They are put on leave for a very long period because I think there were 3 people who'd accused him. That's only 3 people OIOS had to speak to, and then clearly there's some corroboration of the situation and whatever. But it took over a year, and so he was paid his full salary, which I think for an Under-Secretary General is over $200,000 for a whole year tax-free, and he's found guilty, and he gets the money for doing nothing.
First of all, I think it would be wrong to assume anything in terms of how many people investigators speak to. So I will leave it at that. The rules are the rules. UN salaries, just as a point of reminder, are not tax-free, given that we pay a staff assessment of 30% on salaries.
Wish we had that.
Well, I mean, some people pay less than 30% on their income. Anyway, let's. I will leave it at that. I don't think Paulina is briefing today, so we shall see you mañana. I should be. Yeah.